All right. Well, so grateful for you guys being here tonight. As Keely and I were preparing for this event and praying for this over multiple weeks, just asking God that He would bring the people that He wanted to be here, and just so grateful for you guys being here tonight. So what I'd like to do is to take a few minutes and to share with you about the vision we have for Living Stones Lodge, and kind of a little bit of where it came from, how it came to be, and what we plan to do with the ministry. It did dawn on me and occur to me that really what we're asking you to be a part of in those three ways that Joshua just mentioned, really we're asking you to be a part of something that hasn't actually started yet. And so when I think about how many of you that have been here tonight, shown up tonight to be a part of this, it was something that hasn't even begun yet. We're just very grateful for that. So I want to share with you the vision and where we're going to be going. So to start off with, I want to talk about our mission statement. So our mission statement, it's simple, right? It's to help young men find their identity and purpose in Jesus Christ through close proximity discipleship. And I'll talk a little bit about what we mean by close proximity discipleship here in just a moment. But really that's what we want to do, is we want to help young men find their identity and purpose. You think about, I don't know if you've ever thought about it, what is my identity and purpose? Because we all have one, or think we have one, but maybe you haven't given it a lot of thought. But I guarantee you there's a lot of young men that are missing it. They don't know who they are, and they don't know why they're even here on this planet. And so our mission statement is to help them find their identity and purpose through Jesus Christ. So the next thing, we'll talk about our name. So why did we pick the name Living Stones Lodge? So 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 4 and 5 says, "As you come to him, a living stone, rejected by men, but in the sight of God, chosen and precious, you yourselves, like living stones, are being built up as a spiritual house, to be a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ." So really that's what we hope to have happen with these young men, is that they would come to faith in Christ if they're not believers already, and that they would recognize that they are part of something bigger than themselves. They are a stone, a living stone, part of the spiritual house that Jesus Christ is building, that He is the cornerstone of. And so that's what we hope to do through it, and that's why we picked the name. All right, so close proximity discipleship. I don't know if I coined that phrase or if I picked it up somewhere along the way, but really what we mean by it is that close proximity discipleship means, how do we imitate somebody who's further along the path than we are? Because really that's what discipleship is supposed to be. Put some scriptures up here, and in each one of them we can see that Paul talks about a similar thing. He's saying, imitate me as I imitate Christ. He's talking about the things that you have seen, learned and received and heard and saw in me. These things do, right? So you think about in Christianity, if we're supposed to, as a believer, imitate the Christian life of somebody who's further along the path than we are, how do we get a chance to do that? A lot of times in modern Christianity, those times are very few and far between. Maybe you have the privilege of meeting with somebody for coffee once a week, which is great. There's absolutely value in that, right? But what if we could give young men not just glimpses of a Christian life that they're supposed to imitate now and again, but if we could give them an extended period, 8 months, of being around other men and women who are further along the path than they are in their Christian walk, whose lives they could imitate. So not just telling them about what the Christian life's supposed to be like, but showing them, modeling it for them, right, in a way that they can imitate. If you think about kids, those of you that have kids, whether they're young or old, you can definitely relate to this, right? You think about, how does a child learn to use a fork? Well, most of the time you don't call them in one day and say, "Hey, welcome, we're going to have fork classes today. We're so glad you came." How do they learn? It's by watching their siblings, watching their parents, and then one day they pick up the plastic fork and they start stabbing things, right? Because they're imitating what they've seen. And that's really what the Christian life is supposed to be as well. But a lot of times we just don't have the close proximity that we need. All right. So, Narrow Gate Lodge, Joshua mentioned it earlier, but this is a ministry that's been going for 20 years in Tennessee. They're a little bit outside of Franklin, Tennessee, and they've been doing what we hope to do with Living Stones Lodge. They've been doing it for 20 years. It was about 15 years ago when my wife and I were missionaries in El Salvador that I first was exposed to the ministry of Narrow Gate Lodge. Somehow I got on their email list. I can't even remember how. Somebody told me about them, or I found them on Facebook, but somehow I got on their email list, and I started getting these emails that are telling me about them doing close proximity discipleship with these young men. And I remember at that time just being really impacted by it and thinking, wow, what would it look like to do something like that here in El Salvador where we were as missionaries? But it just wasn't the right time yet. And so now fast forward, here we are in the States, and God has brought it back around. But we're so grateful to have a ministry model that not is just just getting started, but they've been doing it for 20 years. In 20 years, you learn a lot of things. You try a lot of things that work, things that don't work. And so you end up, after 20 years, with a pretty well-refined model. And Narrow Gate has been so generous to share that model with us. We met with them. They said, yeah, any of our materials, the things we've learned, we're happy to share those things with you guys. So we're grateful to have a good ministry model to start with. All right, so who are we targeting? We're looking at, targeting sounds bad. Who are we aiming this at? Who are we trying to reach? Yeah, we're not shooting them, right? We're ministering to them. But it's 18 to 25-year-old men. And we chose this range for a reason. That starts at 18 very intentionally. We want them to be adults, at least legally adults. They can vote for a president. They can join the military. They can make a decision to be a part of this ministry or not, right? So we're intentionally not starting with minors. The upper age limit is a little bit more flexible, just as we were able to have guys apply. So why would they do this, or who is it for? So it's for believers and non-believers. Narrow Gate, for example, has lots of guys who have come through who were not believers when they started and ended up putting their faith in Jesus Christ to save them through their experience there. It's from good homes and broken homes, high school graduates or high school dropouts, all the way through college graduates, everything in between, troubled pasts and good kids. A question we get a lot is, are you going to deal with active substance abuse? And the answer is no. We won't be set up for that. But if somebody was able to go to like a treatment center, get sober, then they could absolutely come and be a part of Living Stones Lodge. So why would they participate? Lack of purpose or direction, failure to launch, empty from bad decisions, or disillusioned with what they thought was important, and then finding that it wasn't actually important as they thought. As we've talked about this ministry with a lot of people, and maybe you're sitting here tonight and you're thinking, oh, I have multiple guys that come to mind that would fit this criteria. And that's definitely been our experience as we've talked to people, that there's no shortage of men that come to mind that would maybe be good candidates for this. Or I've talked to a lot of guys who are maybe older now. Maybe they're in their 40s or 50s, and they say, man, I wish I had had something like this that I could have been a part of when I was 18. So I think it's definitely a common need, as Joshua mentioned, in our society today for young men to find their purpose and identity. All right, so we want them to answer 2 questions while they're there. And really, it's a chance to put life on pause. Can you imagine doing that right now? If you could just put your life on pause for 8 months, you don't have to worry about bills, you don't have to cut the grass, you don't have to do anything. You just have to answer 2 questions. Would you take that opportunity? It'd be a great opportunity, right? Well, that's the opportunity we want to offer these young men, for them to be able to answer these 2 questions. Who am I? And hopefully the answer they come away with is, I'm a son of God, right? And then, why am I here? Why am I on this planet? And really for them to have their purpose be rooted in Jesus Christ, that their life, whatever they end up doing, wherever they end up working, their life is to glorify Jesus Christ with their life. So that's what we want them to do during their 8 months. All right, so we've got an application process. Narrow Gate has generously shared this with us as well. When they started out, they just kind of let anybody in. You know, if anybody wanted to be a part of it, they could. But they found out over the years that they had guys with certain characteristics that would almost always make it through and do well. And then they had other guys with other characteristics that almost never did well. And so they kind of refined their application process to be looking for certain qualities, certain characteristics in these guys. And so we've mentioned a few of them here. Desire to change. You know, if you don't want to change, it's going to be hard to be in an 8-month thing where everybody's wanting to help you change, right? An openness to faith. So don't necessarily have to be a believer in Jesus Christ yet, but definitely need to not be aggressively atheist. We're going to talk about the Bible. We're going to talk about Jesus. So if they're not okay with that, then it's not going to be a good fit. Receptivity to feedback. Learning orientation, the ability to apply past experiences to future decisions, some discipline and tenacity, and then lastly, authenticity. So those are some of the qualities that we'll use for the interview process as we have these young men apply to be a part of Livingstone's Lodge. All right, so it's broken up into 3 phases. There are 8 months there, and I'll talk about the 3 phases in detail here in just a minute. But if you notice, in the last section there, we're going to start these guys in classes together. So they won't start an individual. They'll start in a class of other guys, 3 to 8, with maybe 6 guys kind of being the sweet spot. And they're going to start in a new class every other month. So in a typical year, then we would have 6 classes of guys that would start every other month. And then they'll move through the different phases together within their class. They end up building really strong friendships. We've met some of these guys from Narrowgate that have done this, and they keep in touch with each other for a long, long time. Those bonds that are formed are really strong within their class and with the other guys there, but definitely within their class, really strong bonds. All right, so the first phase that we'll look at, actually, here's a diagram. So this is I wish I could show you an actual property that we're ready to move into. We're not quite there yet. We're still praying, still looking, actively checking out properties and asking God to provide the right one. So if you could join us in praying for that, we would definitely be appreciative of that. But this is just an example of what a property might look like. So you see over here on the right-hand side, we've got the phase 1, which is the camping area, and where they're camping out in the woods. I'll talk about that here in just a second. Phase 2 would be kind of a bunkhouse where they're going to be together not only with their class, but some of the other classes ahead or behind them. And then finally, they'll finish out with the phase 3 in the lodge house, which is going to be more like a house with bedrooms and things like that. The lodge house is where Keely and I would also be living. Part of that close proximity model is that Keely and I would be living there with the guys and being able to be in close proximity with them and having conversations and just all those things that would naturally happen when you're together with somebody. Okay, so phase 1, we call it Foundation. It's 35 days long, and they are camping in tents in the woods for 35 days. And for some of you, you're probably thinking, that sounds like a dream come true. I love camping. I love being time in the woods. Others of you are thinking, you have got to be kidding me. How could you possibly survive for 35 days in the woods? But I will tell you, this is very intentional. And Narrowgate even told us, they said, we tried to do away with this, and then we brought it back because we realized it really helps strip away a lot of those things that the young men come in thinking is so important. And it allows them to really get down to just the basics of life. They've got a shelter to sleep in, they've got a warm sleeping bag, they've got food to eat, but they are roughing it, right? They are cooking their own meals over the fire and with a camp stove. So it is really learning a lot of outdoor skills, which builds confidence. So there's a lot of benefit from this first phase, kind of stripping away all those things that they think are important. One of the things they're going to do during this phase is study the book of John. So if those of you who are familiar with the book of John, it's all about Jesus, who he is, the miracles that he did, the gospel. And so that book of John, for those who are believers, is going to really give them a good idea of who Jesus is and what it means to really be a disciple. Not just say, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, but to really be a follower of Jesus. For those that are not believers, they're going to be challenged with the gospel. They're going to get a chance to really see who Jesus is throughout the book of John. And then at the end of their time in this first phase, be challenged to make a decision. That what am I going to do with Jesus? And that's what happens at the end of this first phase. So those who decide, yes, I want to be a follower of Jesus, whether they were a believer or not before, would then move on to phase 2. So phase 2, it's called community. So phase 2 is 4 months long, so significantly longer. In this phase, they're going to be moving into the bunkhouse. There's a lot more community. There's a lot more living together. We've got multiple classes of guys that are all together in one place. And you can imagine there's friction. But that also is by design. helping them to learn how to resolve conflicts and to work through things and to forgive each other and to have crucial conversations where they can say, hey, I'm upset with you because of something you did and I want to work it out. So this is an opportunity to do that. They're going to learn a lot of practical things: cooking, cleaning, how to do laundry, how to change the oil in a car, how to use tools. A lot of those things that a lot of young men these days don't end up learning. And finally, they're going to do Bible studies, going through a bunch of different books of the Bible together. One of the things that they're going to be doing is they call it the study of Philemon. And a big effort is to connect what they're learning in Scripture with the things that they end up doing with their hands. And so an example of that is called the Philemon box. And so they'll go through the book of Philemon, short book, right? But it's all about the restoration of relationship. Paul is talking to Philemon and saying, hey, you need to make up and restore the relationship between you and Onesimus, your runaway slave. And so this book talks about restoring relationships. So that's what the guys are challenged to do then. So they go into the wood shop. They are doing some wood turning on a lathe, and you can actually make a wooden pen, right? You put all the pen parts in there, make a pen. Then they're going to write out a handwritten copy of Philemon. And then while they're doing that, they're going to be thinking about and praying about who's somebody that I need to restore my relationship with. It could be a parent, could be a sibling, maybe a coach or a neighbor or a friend, but it's somebody they need to restore their relationship with. So then they take the same pen and write out a letter to that person, asking them to forgive them, asking them to restore the relationship. Then in the wood shop, they're making a wooden box, kind of an ornate wooden box. They take the pen, the copy of Philemon, the copy of the letter, they pack it into the box, and then they ship it off to the person. And guys, heard countless stories at Narrowgate of restored relationships. And so it's a great example of what we're trying to do with connecting what they're learning in Scripture, and not just have it be head knowledge, but to really put it into practice and have them actually walk it out and live it out in life. So that's going to be phase 2, community. And then we go into phase 3. Phase 3 is service. And at this point, they're going to move into the house where it's going to be more like they're going to have a bedroom. It's a little bit more like real life because you're preparing, and after the end of this phase, to transition back into real life. So we're preparing them for that. They're going to be doing some learning about spiritual gifts. What are my spiritual gifts? Learning sound financial practices. How to date a woman in a God-honoring way. Young men definitely need that, right? Just learning about the importance of an involvement in a local church. So when they leave Livingstone's Lodge and they go back to wherever home is, whether that's in the Kansas City area or somewhere else in the United States or Canada or wherever it is. I mean, we could have guys come from wherever. But whenever they go home, we want them to be well prepared to re-enter the reality of life. So we'll talk a lot about temptation, a lot about what to do when you're no longer on this kind of isolated island of Livingstone's Lodge, and now all of a sudden you have all these things available to you again. How do you handle that in a way that honors Jesus Christ? So we'll talk about those things in the third phase. It's 3 months long, and that's the final stretch of their time there. And then to finish it off, there's a graduation. And the graduation ceremony is going to be really incredible. I wish I had a video to show you of our own graduation ceremonies. Next year, when we gather together to do this, we'll have stories of Livingstone's For the time being, though, you can definitely go onto Narrowgate's website or their YouTube channel. If you want to cry, I would encourage you to watch one of the graduations. It's very moving. Incredible to watch these guys come up. Incredible to watch their dads come and be a part of it, because that's one of the parts of the graduation is a father or father figure will give a blessing to the graduate. The graduate kneels down on his knees. The dad comes up and puts his hand on his head and speaks a blessing over him. That has also been responsible for many restored relationships between father and son. It's really cool. One of the things they're going to do is they're going to choose a mentor. So a previous graduate, I'm not sure yet what we're going to do with our first guys that go through because there's no previous graduates yet. We'll have to figure that out. But they're going to choose a previous graduate to be their sponsor. So they will be part of the graduation ceremony, and then that guy is going to mentor them and disciple them over the course of the next year. So as they leave Livingstone's Lodge, they go back to wherever home is. This other graduate is going to keep in touch with them and text them and call them and help them navigate the temptations and different things they're going to encounter when they get home. They get an engraved sword presentation, which is really cool. And then really it's a time to declare manhood. Maybe the government would consider them men already because of their age and what it says on their driver's license. But a lot of these guys don't necessarily consider themselves men when they come in. But by the time they go through and they graduate, we are declaring and expecting manhood, right? For them to act like men who can honor Jesus Christ through the way that they live and honor him. All right, ripple effect. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what would happen to a young man? He's 18 to 20, 25, and all of a sudden, the course of his life gets changed because he figures out who he is and why he's here. And the ripple effect that then has, then the spouse that he chooses. What a difference, right? The kids that he has and the father that he would be, and even just interaction with family. The occupation that he goes into, whether he starts a company or works for a company or goes to college. And then finally with the local church participation. We're excited to think about how the local churches, Grace Church and others in the area, will be positively impacted by an influx of young men who know who they are in Jesus Christ and are wanting to serve him and honor him throughout their lives. I am excited to see what that will do to local churches. All right. Why this slide, right? How did that get in there? No. So I heard an illustration years ago, and it talked about that sometimes God will give you an idea or a dream that he wants you to accomplish. And he described it being like a chicken egg. So not like you get in a Hy-Vee or grocery store, but like a fertilized chicken egg that can actually become a chick, right? So this dream or vision that God gives you, you have to incubate it, has to be kept at the right temperature, neither too hot nor too cold. You have to protect it. If something comes in and cracks it, you lose all your potential. You have to wait. You can't be impatient and say, I want a chicken right now. Well, that's not the way it works. You have to wait until it's ready to hatch. And so Keely and I feel like this has been a chicken egg, so to speak, that we've been carrying around for about 15 years. And there's been a few times when we thought, oh, maybe this is the right time. And then God said, no, it's not the right time. Just keep incubating the egg, keep protecting it, keep being patient, and then I'll show you the right time. And so in 2023, about January, God nudged me. How does that work? I don't know, but it's clear, right? When God nudges you and says, hey, I want you to do this. And he nudged me to talk to Keely and go out and visit Narrowgate in Tennessee. We don't have any family that way. All our family's out west. So we usually go west. We don't go east. But we went east. We went to Narrowgate and we visited. And in a good way, it wrecked us. Kind of the you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube kind of thing, right? Where once you see discipleship happening in this close proximity way, it was difficult to come back to Overland Park, back to Kansas City and say, I'm just going to meet with guys once a week for coffee for an hour. Again, there's absolutely value in that. But when you see something that goes beyond that, when you see something that has the potential to impact young men in an incredible way, it was hard to let that go. And we couldn't let it go. God didn't let us let it go. Kept it on our hearts. We prayed about it. And that's when God said, hey, I want you to take the model that they're offering and that they have refined over these 20 years, and I want you to start one like it here in the Kansas City area. And so the egg is, I don't know if it's hatched or trembling, but it's definitely close. And I'm so excited that you guys are being a part of this hatching, this part of this dream, this vision that we've been carrying around for a long time, to be able to see it actually coming to be. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for being a part of it. I'll close with this. We've got a passage in Joshua chapter 3 that's probably one of Keely and I's favorite passages. If you're not familiar with it, it's the story where the nation of Israel, as Moses is passed on, and now Joshua is leading the nation of Israel. And they come to the River Jordan. And it's hard enough to cross a river with 3 million people, but this is during flood stage. So it's the worst possible time to try to cross this river. But God tells Joshua, I want you to cross the river. He says, line everybody up. 3 million people. How do you make a line of 3 million people? I'm not even sure what that would look like. You do like 10 across, 50 across, but he lines them all up and he says, I want you to put the priests with the Ark of the Covenant, the presence of God, up at the front. And when the soles of the feet of the priests touch the water, then I'll make a way for you to go across. Now, if you're like me, you read this story and you're like, wouldn't it have been easier if God, like in the morning, parted the river, like stopped the water, showed the dry ground, then everybody lines up, then everybody goes across on dry ground? Well, yeah, sure, that would definitely be easier. But that wouldn't give God the glory, would it? That wouldn't require the same faith to say, I'm lining up and I'm stepping in, even though I don't know how it's going to happen. And so for Keely and I, over the course of our lives, and definitely for this project, this Living Stones Lodge, we have lined up and we are stepping in obedience. And there's a lot of question marks still. I wish I could say, man, every question has a period now. But it doesn't yet. There still are questions. But God is parting the waters. He's already doing that. You guys being here tonight is part of God parting the waters of the river and making a way for us to go across on dry land and to have this chicken egg hatch into a ministry that's going to impact a lot of young men. So thank you again for being here. It's so great to see faces I know and faces I don't know. If I haven't met you yet, please don't leave without introducing yourself. We'd love to meet you. Next, my beautiful wife is going to come up and share. And so grateful for her and just her partnership in this ministry.
Just to look around this room is incredible. It really is. To see this and to see what God has done. This is amazing. So thank you for being here. Thank you for everybody putting this together. There was so much to all the components of it, and so it does not go unnoticed and appreciated. So we have 2 girls, and I remember telling somebody about the ministry that we're endeavoring to do, and they said, "Don't you just have girls?" And yes, we do, and we're about to have a lot of boys. And so I remember a lot of people asking also for what would be my role, because it was something that came to our minds as well, that we didn't know really what it looked like. And so we sat down with the founders of Narrowgate and asked them, "Stacy, what was your role? What did you do?" Because it was concerning. Ryan was concerned for me and for what my role and what my part would be in that as well, because he loves me and he wants God to be, he wants to use me as well. And I remember what Stacy said is that those guys need to see a wife. They need to see somebody that's a role model of how to be a wife, how to support their husbands, how to work through a conversation and an argument. They need to see that lived out in front of them. They need to know what it is to be around a lady that loves God and that walks with God. They need to see that example in front of them. And some of the other things, I remember what Stacy said. There was one time that she had gone up to one of the new students, and she walked up to him and said, "I am so glad you're here. I love you." And what impacted him was, how can you love me without even knowing me? And through the course of his 8 months there, he came to understand what it meant, that he was loved, that he was loved by God, but also by her, and that she really meant it, and it was a genuine thing. We're excited about the opportunity for us. And Jamie and Trent, if you want to kind of head up here, we're excited for this opportunity and to be parents of boys. We're going to need a lot of wisdom and guidance on that, in that endeavor. But again, we covet your prayers. We need it. We need your prayers. If you guys want to sit down. So we have the privilege of having Jamie and Trent Twaddell with us. And we're just going to have a little roundtable conversation with them. So Trent actually went through Narrowgate. And I remember Ryan having coffee with Trent and told him about Narrowgate. And we just suggested it, and he went. And now we're going to kind of ask him some questions, both of them questions. But he, last year, right? Yeah. Last year. Okay, so what were, Trent, if you could kind of give us briefly, what were the circumstances that led up to you even being interested in Narrowgate?
Well, I just graduated high school. I was working a dead-end job, and I kind of just felt purposeless and empty. And I remember I had a conversation with my mom. I'd gone up to the church on one of my off days while she was working, and I was just kind of telling her, I was like, I need something. Like, I need something that's next. Oh.
There you go.
All right, cool beans. I was like, I need something that's next. Like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, and I need to do something. And I prayed a prayer that night. I was like, God, I don't know what you want me to do, but I trust whatever happens. And I think it was later in that week, Ryan reached out to me. He came with me at church, and he's like, hey, I don't have any sons, but if I did have a son, there's this place called Narrowgate, and I'd like to send my son if I had one through that. And I was like, all right, that sounds cool. And so, yeah, we went and talked about it, and I wasn't 100% sold on it because I was like, that's a big commitment, 8 months. And I remember later that night, I was at students at the youth group, and they were singing the song called "The Narrow Road," or I don't know if it's called that, but it talks about the narrow road in it. And I was just sitting there thinking, I was like, yep, this sounds right. This is what I need to do. Yeah.
Incredible. So if you were to say, and this is hard to narrow it down to one, what is one of the biggest takeaways from your time at Narrowgate?
God is real. That was something that I didn't really have an understanding of, like going through my life. Like, I had this idea of God, but I kind of treated it as like, oh, it's like Santa Claus. Like, you act good, and once a year he'll bless you, or you just gotta keep on acting good. But after going through Narrowgate, I was like, man, this is like real. Like, I can actually talk to God and like have a conversation with him, and he will talk back to me. Like, it was just incredible.
Yeah, that's incredible. So if you were to answer the questions, the two questions that Narrowgate asks, for you to discover the answers to, how did it help you to answer the questions, who am I and why am I here?
On like the first day, they told us, hey, this is 8 months, we're going to be figuring out the answers to these. And I was sitting there and I was like, I already know the answers. I'm a child of God, and I'm here to make disciples of every nation and love Jesus. And like, it felt like a Sunday school answer almost. Like, I didn't know it. I know what to say, but I didn't like know it in my heart and my head. And like going through everything, like afterwards, it's the same answer, but there's like more behind it. Like, it's not just words, it's like expression of my heart. And so I think that was, yeah.
Okay. And what was one of the hardest parts of Narrowgate?
Being away from home. Like, at first I didn't think I'd miss it that much, and then after the first 2 weeks I was like, man, I'm really out here doing this, and I'm alone. But not alone, just a different type of alone. And so it was really hard just kind of getting through that, because I haven't been away from home ever before, away from my family.
Did it feel like it went fast or at a snail's pace, the 8 months? Yes and yes.
Yes and yes. It did at times, but other times I look back and I'm like, man, I've already been here 5 months or 6 months or however long.
Yeah. And then what was the most impactful part of the graduation ceremony?
The Father's blessing. In foundation, they give us like 8 hours alone in the woods, and you start to think about everything. And I wrote my parents kind of just an apology letter because I felt moved. I was like, how have I grown up and disrespected everybody? And so, yeah. So it
Don't look at me.
yeah. Sorry. And so I wrote a letter of apology to my parents. Because
I have two.
Okay. I'll take one. Whew. I felt so terrible about how I'd been through my life. And then we had the opportunity to make the Philemon box and write the letters. And so I wrote the letter to my dad, and it started to like reconcile our relationship. And then the Father's blessing during the ceremony, it was just, I felt like we had truly come to understand of each other. Yeah. Sorry.
We had the privilege of being at his graduation and to see. We actually were there the day you started as well. So his orientation, we were there, and then his graduation, and we got to see what happened on that stage. And there was not a dry eye in the place for the impact of what had happened in Trent and his parents and family. Would you recommend a young man to go through Narrowgate or a ministry like it?
Yes, absolutely. It's so beneficial. Like, if we talk about biblical manhood and like growing up into a man of God, and this is like one of the first steps, because like you look at Jews back in 2,000 years ago, like they had a bar mitzvah when they turned 13, and that was their coming of age for a man. And like, we don't really do that in an American culture. And so this is so beneficial because it's something that you can go back on and say, yes, I am a man. Like, I went through a trial or a struggle, and I came out on top. And so, yeah, I'd recommend it.
And so what would you say, what's a way that your life is different for having gone to Narrowgate?
I mean, immediately after I got back, kind of life just started going downhill again. But it wasn't like a lasting like depression or sorrow. It was like I had this foundation to lean back on. Like, I am a child of God. I went through this, and I have a relationship with God. I don't have to be alone in my struggle anymore. Like, God is there watching out for me and looking out for me. He's with me in my struggle. And so, yeah, that was, yeah.
It's amazing. Jamie.
Hi.
What would you say some of the biggest differences in Trent that you noticed and seen since he graduated?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing is at home. You can't look at me. I was known as the crying mom when we dropped him off. Just, yeah, if that tells you anything. I think the biggest thing is how many times I hear him talk about how he needs to talk to God, and he needs time to be in the Word, and he needs time to spend with the Father before he makes his next move. He is in constant community with the Lord. And, you know, this kid, we raised him to follow Jesus. He became a believer when he was 7 in his childlike innocence, which is wonderful. I mean, that's what we want for our kids. But this is also what we want for our kids. So to have him in this new era where he's become a man, and he is leaning on the Lord for his every move.
Yeah. And so when Trent came to you and he told you that he was going to go to Narrowgate, what did you feel when he told you? And then how does it compare to what you felt when he graduated?
Okay, so backstory. Ryan actually talked to me about Narrowgate first, and I watched the video and I thought it looked amazing. I think I mentioned it to my husband. I might have mentioned it in passing to Trenton, but I told Ryan, I was like, you're going to need to tell him about it. It'll be better if he hears it from you. So that kind of, was the next steps there. I saw the value in it right away. I felt like, who wouldn't, if you could take 8 months and just go do this thing and not have responsibilities of the world and be able to kind of be in a bubble. Who wouldn't do that? I thought it was amazing. And every young man's dream, go camping in the woods and woodworking and leatherworking and I don't know, just all like cooking over a fire and disc golf. I don't know, there's a lot of stuff. So I thought it sounded like every boy's dream from even when they were, when they were a kid. And so from that component of it, I thought it was awesome. And then of course, I'm a kids director. I'm the kids director at the Olathe campus for Grace Church. And so to me, like, to have this opportunity for my kid to get to spend with Jesus and to have this mega vitamin shot of Jesus, yes, please. I've seen how that works, how it's worked in our church over the years with our what we call SBO. It's our version of Vacation Bible School. We've seen how kids come out of that and just having that 1 week. So to have 8 months of it, I just thought, gosh, that's an amazing opportunity. And then to see, what was the second part of the question?
Just to see comparison.
Oh, comparing. Okay, yeah. So then the other side of it, like I said, to see who he is now, there's a little bit of a letdown when you come out of a program like that because it is so immersive and so amazing. And so to come out of it and, you're back in the real world and you're back in our house with, home renovations and we're all running to and fro to different appointments and activities and this and that, and you got to have some responsibilities now, and you have to mow the lawn, and not that they didn't have those responsibilities at Narrowgate, but when you get home, it's kind of a different feeling, and so I wasn't surprised to see a little bit of maybe a letdown. And he's still figuring things out. I mean, this is not the be-all, end-all. But the thing that gives me so much encouragement for him, and the thing that I think is the biggest value, is it's all God. Like I said before, to hear him say, I really need to get alone. I really need to talk to God. And there's been several times where he's said, I need to take the TV out of my room, or I need to, put my phone away for a while. Just to see that he's recognizing those things for himself and seeing the relationship and how he needs to continue deepening it. It's great. He's not perfect, but he's great.
None of us are. So the idea of another young man going, what would be the advice you would give to another mom knowing that their son would be going to a Narrowgate or to Livingstone's Lodge?
Yeah, so I do have another son who is 16. He'll be 17 in February. He has already said that he would like to do something like this. I hold that loosely because I know everybody's on their own path. But to me, this is such a natural next step for any young man. I feel like, can we just build this into our culture so that all young men do this before they go to college? Imagine sending your kid to college after they've had this amazing opportunity to really commune with God and really have time to just focus on him and deepen their relationship without having the responsibilities of the world. I mean, it's just like the best opportunity ever. And so it's been amazing. And that's what I would tell a mom. It was super hard. You can ask any of my friends. I'm such a crier. And there was, every time we got a letter home, it was the highlight of our whole family. We would share them immediately, taking pictures and, taking pictures of the letter and passing it around. People at church that knew, they wanted to see the letters and read them, and just so excited about that. And to see the progression of the letters, the first few letters that he sent were pretty heart-wrenching. You could tell he was having a really hard time. But as he grew and as he was in the program, to see how his faith was increasing and how just his knowledge and just growth was incredible to witness that. So yes, do it. That's the short answer.
That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you guys for sharing. Thank you for being willing to talk about the journey and the experience for you guys. I know that everybody has a young man that they know of. And we know that whatever, for a student that goes through Narrowgate or Living Stones, whatever they do next will be better for having had gone through a program like this, because it does give them the understanding of who they really are, who God says they are, and why He has them here. And so whatever that would be, if it would be in a profession, if it would be in ministry, whatever it is, if it's the military, it will be better for having had gone through a program like this. So thank you guys for sharing.
Can I share one other thing?
Yes, please.
Just one other thing. Sorry, I won't take control of the stage again. Just one other thing I will share is Trenton's experience spilled over to our whole family. It brought new conversations to our home. It helped us to trust the Lord in new ways that we hadn't before. And so to me, that's also a huge perk of what happened. And, it's kind of crazy to think about. My son went away for 8 months, and it helped all of our faith grow. And I think that was another really impactful moment that I wanted to share.
Yeah, a huge ripple effect for that.
Who in here wants to hatch a ministry? I like that analogy. When I was sitting there, I'm like, I'm going to hatch a ministry. Well, we are going to spend some time talking about how you can get involved with Living Stones Lodge, how you can partner as you leave here today. You have a table leader, and they're going to help lead a discussion and some prayer. But I want to give you some notes and some nuggets on how you can partner. So when you're sitting there in the crowd and you hear this ministry, you see a picture go up on the screen, and there's a whole lot of land. There's acreage, there's buildings, right? And then there's also young men. I overheard someone say they were going to come and be rent-free. I heard Ryan say that. So there's no rent for 9 months, and these men, they're going to eat, right? And I do have girls and boys, and I'm so excited that the Blackstocks are going to see how men eat and what and what those grocery bills may look like, right? But when we're looking at partnerships, right, before we get into the finances, let's talk about the 3 things. The first one is prayer. If you guys pull your cards out here that are in front of you, you can flip over to the back. We'll ask you at your table. And sometimes you don't know what side's the back. The back says prayer prompts. But at the very top, you'll see praying for a property. 30 to 60 minutes from Overland Park, 20 plus acres, a house with at least 4 bedrooms, outbuilding or barn with utilities, wooded acreage, and a bonus is if we could have some horses, a place for them to roam. Participants, pray for the hearts of families. Pray for your willingness to be an ambassador to this ministry and connecting people with Ryan and Keeley. And then last but not least, praying for provisions. Funded needing to obtain the property, funded needed in association startup costs, ongoing operation costs. So let's talk about what those costs would be and also celebrate in what God is doing. There have been significant contributions already to this ministry to where we know, like Ryan said, the egg's trembling and this ministry is going to hatch. So much so, let's talk about maybe first year operating expenses. I'm going to give you a large number, and then I'm going to break it into 3 categories that I'd love for you to pray about partnering in. So the large number over 12 months to get this started would be about $1.3 million. For those of you who are wondering, well, where does this $1.3 million go? There's about $950,000 of it budgeted for an actual property. The property with 20 acres, the property with the building. And what's really cool is there have been contributions where we know that that property is going to be purchased. But we've got to prayerfully find that property that fits, right? But then there's operating expenses. You know, you envision this property. You drive up to it, it probably has a sign, right? You go up this road that's going to have to be maintained. There's some people in this room that I know maintain properties, and no matter what that road is made out of, it will need to be maintained. And whenever you have property, you got to have equipment to maintain that property, right? The grass has got to be cut. There are equipment and things like that you need to upkeep it. That would be involved in the first year of the ministries as far as you're looking at financially. And then let's talk operation expenses. So right now, as Keely and Ryan and they're seeking just great counsel, they've got an operating expense in those first 12 months that's about $19,500 per month. For the people who do quick math in here, it's a little over $250,000, right? So what does that $19,500 actually go to, right? But there are people that work in this ministry. The first two servants of this ministry are going to be Ryan and Keely. And I got the opportunity to overlook their books. And I said, Ryan, is that all you're going to pay yourself, brother? And they're just so humble. And I said, that is amazing. And so they've got their salaries in there. And as the ministry gets to about month 6 to month 12, there's a call for a couple other people to join into the ministry to help. Because you imagine if you're in close proximity and you're discipling, and then you also have a group of people coming in 3 months later, another group coming in 3 months later, there's admin, there's a need for care. And so there's an expectation, right, that those operating expenses over time as the ministry grows will go up. So one of the things that I would ask you to pray about in trying to help hatch this is could I be a long-term partner? Has that been laid on my heart today? Can I be an individual who gives annually and monthly? And those amounts could be $50. Those amounts could be hundreds of dollars. But it's not really about the amount. It's really about the obedience. If God's called you to step to the waters, so that we all in here can be a part of celebrating in the glory of what He's going to do in this ministry for His kingdom here on earth. So I'm going to ask you guys to take a moment and meet with your table leader. If there's some questions about some of those numbers, they've been informed and can help shepherd you to get your answers, as well as I'd like you guys to take some time to pray. Pray for the provisions needed to get this ministry started. Pray for God to open up hearts and conversations for you to talk to be an ambassador to connect men to this ministry. And last but definitely not least, pray for where's this property going to be? So, once you're done doing that, our evening is in conclusion, and you'll have the opportunity to walk over here to the corner, and you're going to leave with one of the most high perceived value gifts that you could leave with. I'm joking. It is a great gift, but we want you to have something when you go out to just remember this moment where you guys were at the inaugural charity event for Livingstone Lodge. Thank you.